This is Christina Shala, and welcome to another episode of Empowering the Educator. Today we're going to take a look at different strategies that you can use in your classroom to teach beginner ELL students academic language. Before getting into different teaching strategies, it's important to understand what academic language is. In a prior video, 3 tiers of academic language were discussed. Tier 1 being informal common language, Tier 2 being general academic. So now that you've got an understanding of the 3 tiers of academic language, the next question is, why focus on academic language? A lot of people argue that conversation is the most important just because you want the students to start making friends right away and start feeling socially connected to others. And don't get me wrong, this is 100% important. But when you're taking a look at what your students are doing in school for the majority of the day, it is learning academic content. They are sitting in science and math, social, music, and art classes all day long. And so for them, if they're only getting the conversation and not the academic, they're missing out. They're not actually starting to understand and learn the content that's being taught. And eventually that is going to catch up to them and they will experience learning gaps later on. So this is why teaching academic language is so important. For your planning, you're going to want to have first and foremost your ELL matrix or whatever government document that you've been given. After getting all your documents in order, the next thing to do is to understand the difference between input, or I like to refer to receptive language as input language because I think of it as being ways that you are going to. As for productive language, I like to refer to it as output because I think of how students are broken this next section down into teaching strategies for Tier 1 academic language and Tier 2 academic language. And within each section, I've broken it down further into reading, listening, writing, and speaking. So to start off with, let's take a look at some strategies for teaching reading skills and Tier 1 academic language. So the first things first, you're going to want to ensure that your students know the alphabet and the letter sounds because they're not going to be able to read the words you're presenting to them if they don't know how to decode or sound out what's in front of them. The next thing, after they've got the alphabet and sounds down, is to provide them with word lists and word sorts. So it could be that you get the students to put all the words related to animals into one column, all the words related to food into another column. You can also have them doing mix and match type activities, where you've got your pictures in one column and the words in the other column, and they've got to figure out what goes with what. You can also try memory games to help them learn Tier 1 type vocabulary words. So you can have the picture on one card, the word on the other card. You could even have the word in English on one card and the word in their native tongue in the other card. It's up to you. You also want to provide these beginner ELL students with a lot of visuals to accompany the text that they're reading. So, for example, if you've got a sentence, the dog is running, a picture next to that sentence would be helpful in ensuring that the students understand what it is that they're reading, just to give them a little bit of context or some clues. You also don't want to be giving the students anything too difficult to read, so it's important to find simple texts that use the words, the academic language that you're teaching, so that they're sort of reviewing it or reviewing them, but in paragraph form. As for some different listening activities you can do with your beginner ELLs, you could start with simply, letters and letter sounds. Having the alphabet in front of them and point to the sound that I'm making. So point to H if you hear huh, those type things. You can do repeat after me activities where you say a short sentence, see if they can hear it, and then repeat back. Point to what you hear activities. So you can lay out a bunch of pictures in front of them like cat, dog, mouse, and they need to point to what you're saying. You can also do draw what you hear activities, draw a circle, draw a rectangle, just sticking to simple things like that. Also, you can give them simple directions and see if they can follow them. Pick up your pencil and they listen and then follow. You can also have them listening to simple audiobooks that sort of tie into the academic language that you're teaching. And if you prepared flashcards for them using Quizlet or quizzes, they can also be listening to the audio as they're learning the words. As for different writing activities you can do with your beginner ELLs, just starting with tracing the letters of the alphabet or copying letters of the alphabet if they're not familiar with them. Taking things one step further, they could be copying or tracing individual words. You can also have them filling in the blanks, so providing them sentences like this is a and then a blank, and if you've got a picture to go with, for example, of a cat, then they would write cat. If you wanted to extend that activity and make it a bit harder, you can actually give them the sentence starters, but they need to write them themselves. So if you've got, for example, this is a, there is a, these are, those are, and then they've got to finish off the sentences and create everything on their own. You can also have them labeling pictures. So for example, if you've got a picture of a farm and then they're required to, label all the animals that they see, cat, dog, horse, cow. You can also have the students doing spelling tests just to help them learn English spelling. And also, you can give them different grammar activities, worksheets where they need to conjugate verbs, for example, in the present tense, or worksheets where they need to figure out how to correctly take a single noun and make it plural. Also, you can have the students creating dictionaries, different types. So a dictionary of nouns, a dictionary of adjectives that they've learned, a dictionary of verbs that they've learned. And then when they go to do their writing and they start forming sentences, they can refer to these different dictionaries and use them sort of as a starting point. When it comes to speaking, this is where your ELL students, for the majority of beginners, are going to struggle and maybe feel the most self-conscious and anxious. So different ways that you can encourage your beginners to start using that academic language out loud are simply to give them pictures and ask them to name things. Just one word to start off with, not even sentences. You can also ask them yes, no type questions, or ask them to express their opinions. So give them I like, I don't like as sentence starters, and then they can finish off the rest. Partner activities are also a good one. So you may even take it so far as to give them a little script to practice. You can also do games like Go Fish, where you're giving a sentence like, can I have a, or do you have a, and they repeat that same sentence starter over and over again, just to help, build that confidence and encourage some of that practice and interacting with other students. You can also have them just reading simple sentences out loud. And you can also give them rhymes, songs, chants to take home, and they can practice, and then the next day or in a few days they can read them out loud to you, or perhaps to a group of students or the class. The big question that seems to come up is, how do I know when to correct pronunciation? And the answer is, you don't want to be over-correcting and, deflating their confidence. But if it's going to affect the meaning of the word that they're trying to say, then you probably want to intervene so that they're not embarrassing themselves, saying a word that they think means something, but then it means something else. When you're correcting student pronunciation, try to be discreet. You don't want the whole, call them out in front of the whole class that they've said something wrong. Maybe try and pull them off to the side, or just, one-on-one quietly correct them. And to correct them, you can have them looking at you as you're saying the word and trying to mimic your mouth movements. And you can also give them a mirror so that they can practice making the different sounds themselves while looking at their mouth movements. Moving on to Tier 2 vocabulary words and strategies for teaching them. This next section will focus more on words and how they relate to subject areas. So it may be that these vocabulary words you find in multiple subject areas, but they are more academic related. So let's start with reading. The first thing, and the one that I consider the absolute most important, is pre-teaching vocabulary. Giving lists of 10 to 15 words for upcoming units that students can take home, a week or a few days before the unit starts. Just gives them that extra jump start so they know what's coming and can get right into it. Other great ideas are diagrams to accompany text. So for example, in science, if you're studying body systems and functions, if you can give them a diagram of a body that's labeled next to it, it sort of helps them in figuring out more of what's happening in the text. Also, using things like timelines or providing bullet points that order events next to a text, for example, in social studies, if it's maybe history related, will help your beginner ELLs out. Visuals, finding a lot of visual materials to go along with the text will also help your students in their comprehension. Also, pointing out text features to help beginner ELLs kind of get contextual clues like headings and subheadings and titles. If they can start looking at these little pieces, it will give them a better idea of what the texts are about or what's coming. And then also looking at providing a different set of texts for your beginner ELL students. So if you're studying, for example, body systems, giving the more difficult text to your other students and sort of finding a more simplified version with more of that academic language that your beginner ELs can access will be super helpful. A lot of the strategies for teaching Tier 2 academic vocabulary words are the same as teaching Tier 1 academic vocabulary words. Instead of giving simple instructions, you can start giving students multi-step instructions. For point to the picture and draw what you hear activities, you can have them more focused on the different subject areas that you are teaching, so maybe more science related or social studies related. You can also have them listening to audiobooks, and the flashcards that you make using Quizlet or quizzes can have more of an academic focus. When it comes to teaching writing, some strategies that you can use are labeling. You can have them doing fill in the blanks, but this time inserting more academic related vocabulary, like relating to science and social in the blanks. You can give them sentence starters. So if you've got kind of a question and answer sheet that you've given the students, you can give them some sentence starters to use in their answers. Word banks are fantastic as well, so that they can start to take some of that vocab and insert them into their answers or into their writing pieces. You can also model sentences for them to use. And you can also give them graphic organizers. Those are a great tool as well. And also challenging them to learn some of the spelling for words that are more subject specific. So when it comes to teaching Tier 2 language vocabulary related to speaking, again, there's a bit of an overlap with strategies that would be used with the Tier 1 vocabulary, only you're going to take a little bit more of a subject-specific focus. So, naming things, but related to the subject that you're covering. For example, in science, you're studying solar system, maybe they're, saying words like sun, moon, star. You can also have them, answering yes/no questions specific to a subject area, expressing simple opinions, likes or dislikes about topics that are being covered. You can also get them doing simple guided presentations where you've sort of given them sentence starters and prompts so that when they get up there, they sort of have a basis to work off of. Or maybe their presentation is simply just saying academic words without sentences related to a topic that you've covered. Got the strategies. Now the question is, where do you find the resources? So I'm going to list a few that I love, and some are free, some are paid. The first one, Teachers Pay Teachers. If you type in beginner ELL, you are going to find so many different packages that teachers have put together, touching on vocabulary and different grammar concepts that are already done for you. The next one is ISL Collective, whereas Teachers Pay Teachers, you're most likely going to have to pay. ISL Collective has a whole range of activities and worksheets on different topics that teachers have done, but they're for free. As far as reading materials, my website, shallowbooks.com, has got a selection of emergent and transitional readers if you've got beginner ELL students in the lower grades that they can use to learn. The ebooks are free online, and they've also got the audio to go with it. As far as paid or non-paid subscriptions to other books, you can check out Epic, Starfall ABCs, Beyond Decodables, and Reading Eggs. So those should give you some start to finding some beginner level materials for your ELLs to start learning some of that Tier 1 and Tier 2 academic vocabulary. Because the aim of this video was teaching academic language to beginner ELL students, Tier 3 vocabulary will not be explored. That'll be looked at in a later video entitled Teaching Academic Language to Intermediate and Advanced Level Students. So be sure to check that out if you've got higher level students. When it comes to assessing and reporting on students' language skills for the reporting in language arts, they're obviously not going to be meeting standards in language arts because their English just simply isn't good enough yet. So you can use the ELL matrix or the standards that you've been given to sort of form a basis of a comment for things that your ELL students can do in terms of learning, Tier 1 and Tier 2 academic vocabulary. So in using those documents sort of as a guideline, it's a good starting point. And then you can go into, areas that maybe they might have met or are starting to meet in your language arts curriculum. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Empowering the Educator Within. Join us next time to learn tips for teaching academic content to beginner ELL students. See you next time.